Hello there, and welcome back to the Disconnected. And I am finally here. This is the culmination for me of so many requests, not of you, but of people to me.
Oh,
saying,
wow.
when can you ever get Brian? Because it's you two that have been the cornerstones for the last few years, and we're here. Wonder Twin powers activate. So glad you're here.
It is my honor, and my apologies for taking so long, and my appreciation for your patience, because you have asked, and you have been incredibly patient, and I thank you.
Well, we're both a little busy. You got a
Yes.
little bit going on in your life lately.
A little bit.
So, I mean, first, let's jump into that. I mean, how does it feel to be one of the leading movie podcasters in the world right now? No, seriously, Pierce Cinema is so much deeper than that.
Okay, I don't know how to take that. I don't know how to interpret it. I do love that the show has grown, in a big way since we started, and we get a lot of appreciation from a lot of people every time we put out an episode, and I am truly, sort of floored by all of it. It's wonderful, and I just love doing it. Like you, I just love talking about movies and digging for, obscure gems, which is what we try to do on Pure Cinema. And, that's what really kind of keeps me going. And amidst the chaos of what is real life, podcasting and physical media and things like that, keep me afloat, if you will.
I will recall literally driving. I think the very first Pure Cinema episode dropped the day I was hosting Pub Trivia, and I was driving listening to Handshake recommendations, and the days have changed so much since then. The small intimacy of Brian and Elric just kind of shooting the shit on a normal Thursday, and now, I mean, it's Tarantino every other month, and life is changing. And yeah.
Well, I should stand people's expectations down for that. I don't know when Quentin will be back, but we did just talk to Roger and Gala just 2 nights ago, and they are delightful, and it was wonderful, and I love being part of the New Beverly, team, like we have been for a few years now. That's pretty cool. I got to say, that's a theater that I really loved, back when I was working at the video store circa 96, 97, watching Swingers. I've said this before on the show, I think, seeing the calendar on the, refrigerator and going, I want to go to that theater, and then moving to LA and going to the theater and really liking it. And then, some 10 years later, getting involved and becoming their podcast. And it's been a real honor, that whole business, so it's been fun.
I went to the New Bev for the first time ever in my life last June, and it's just a magical place. One of those places that still shows film. It just feels different. It's got this electric vibe that I can't replicate here anywhere in Kansas City.
That's too bad. No, I mean, it is really a unique theater, and it's interesting because it's not a huge theater. So I think when people go there, they'll be a little surprised by the size of it. But I think that does give it a certain intimacy. As we're recording this, another big physical media YouTuber, Daisuke Beppu, is now in LA, and I'm going to hopefully get to see him at some point, which I'm really excited about. But I was just over the moon seeing him posting pictures and videos, and I know he went to see the Leone double feature, Fistful and Few Dollars More, and he was palpably excited when he was done, and I just was really moved by that. Just this guy, from Japan, who's now in LA, going to the theater of the town, for us anyway. So it was really cool, and I'm so glad you got to go, because it's a fun experience. It's always a really moving, loving crowd, and they just, I don't know, it's a different vibe there than a multiplex by 1,000, but it's just a lot of good people, a lot of kind, fun movie fans.
Exactly. And you can tell that there are, regulars that go there. You can tell that there are people that practically live there. They, every single month refresh the calendar and, I got to get 15 tickets this month at least, or something like that. And it's just so inviting and welcoming, and just one of those places that's almost a mecca for people like us.
Absolutely. It's become that. And I think that's so neat. I'm so happy about it.
Well, I would be remiss if we didn't dedicate a fairly large chunk of this just to check in, because, I mean, I can't even remember the first Just the Discs episode that was a part of my life, but I think the one that started changing things for me is you had this little tiny YouTuber that I followed for a while, Mr. Aaron Pin, on.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, just hanging out with him and talking to you and making friends with everybody, and it's kind of fully led to this. It's been a crazy little community.
Yeah, well, I got to say, and I've told you off Mike, just how much I appreciate everything that you're doing and you continue to do. Like, you've kind of, and I've said this to you before, like, you've kind of made me feel like it's okay that I can't dedicate the amount of time I'd like to just the discs anymore. It's just become too hard to really put the time that I once did into it. And I feel bad about that because there are a lot of fans and a lot of people that like the show, and I'm only able to do so much. But watching what you're doing, I'm like, he's got it covered. And he's going further than I did even when at my maximum, investment in physical media. And so you've become just like my go-to for stuff that's happening. I send you questions about things. It's that kind of a relationship where, like, I just trust that what's happening, and I don't really have to keep track of it as much anymore because you got it. But I also know that that's a difficult thing, and it's a lot to keep up with, and I know you're a busy guy. So again, more appreciation for all the time that you take to do what you do, man.
I will happily accept the torch, but at the same time, it's difficult to replace somebody like you. And the footsteps that came before those of us that are doing it now are only possible because you've kind of laid that groundwork, and you continue to do that and grow in ways that we still can't imagine. I mean, all of the Pure Cinema guests and the massive amount of people that listen nowadays, that's got to be just a huge change for you. First of all, I mean, from small little, double feature episodes of just the discs in 2018 or whatever to what you're doing today. How's that feel?
I mean, it feels great. It's one of those things that's hard to know or understand how many, like, I can see numbers in the, the Libsyn, like, I can see the downloads and stuff, but it's hard to wrap your head around what that means and who all is being touched by the shows. And so you just have to kind of listen to the feedback that you get and enjoy. And I do enjoy it, and I'm moved by it. And I, will get little letters or messages that I'll read to my wife, and that stuff is hugely important to me. And, if I'm being honest, it helps with the podcasting buffer. As I've told you, like, it's not easy. After so many years of podcasting, it's now become a little bit more difficult to arrange time to do it, which is part of the reason I don't do as much guest stuff, because basically every time I'm doing a show, I'm sort of asking a favor. So I kind of have to save my favors. But that said, when I read my wife, a really nice and heartfelt message, it's, I think that impacts her. And when we go to the New Beverly, sometimes, like, I've taken her a couple times in the past couple of years, and each time somebody has come up and said something, and it's been really sweet. And it's only based on, I don't know, I would just guess my voice, or I don't know how much people recognize me. But when you're at that theater, it's a little easier.
Right.
But she definitely, I think, understands a little bit better in those moments. And that's nice, because I want her to know that I'm doing it for a reason. Like, I'm doing it for me, but like, it's touching people, and that's something, hopefully that she can be softened by, if you will.
I know that fight all too well. I mean, the amount of times I've felt so bad about my calendar, and the number of, like, hey, we got to reschedule that for this weekend because suddenly I've, 2 interviews in one day or something. Stuff has gotten crazy, especially the industry nowadays. And that's probably the perfect segue. Like, you are one of the few people like myself that has kind of always been nuanced about the way we approach the idea of loving films and collecting, and how people have to be, I don't want to say like trepidatious or hesitant, but like safe about the way they're approaching things. Because a lot of people, they get full-blown addicted or into debt, or feel like they need to keep up with the Joneses. And you and a few others we're like some of the only ones that are really like, pump the brakes, make sure you know what you're doing, and just do what you want and not feel pressured to jump into it. So how do you feel about 2023's physical media? Because it's obviously changed a little bit in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love where the hobby is, and I love how passionate people are. I guess if I had to say anything about the hobby, I'm a little concerned. Concerned is too strong a word, probably, but I've definitely noticed, and maybe you have too, that there is a movement away from, at least somewhat, away from the movies themselves, and more about packaging and slip covers, and just things being absolutely pristine and locking things away and in bags and stuff. And I get it. You got to make it look nice. And I have OCD just as bad as any collector, but I've never felt the need to do that. And I just feel like, I've heard some stories. I know some people who run labels and who work intimately with labels, and there's some really crazy people that are collectors, and I'm kind of ashamed of some of them because it's just like gotten out of hand in terms of how cruel and how unpleasant they can be about this stuff. I'm just like, let's enjoy the hobby. But more importantly, let's enjoy the movies. Let's not just buy things to buy things. Right. I mean, I certainly have, as you can probably see over here, there's probably some rap stuff still on these shelves. You know, that happens. But I do feel like there's a lot of even YouTubers that are just buying things and just kind of like, hey, I got this is the kind of videos I'm seeing. And I mean, that's great, I guess. But like, I'm just like, watch these movies. There's so much good stuff, as you know, what's happening from all these labels, that I just want more people to buy the movies and watch them and talk about the movies. It's great when they have extra features that gives you incredible context that actually allows you to learn that much more about the movies, which is why I feel like there's more, it's not at stake, but there's more that people are missing out on if they're just buying it and putting it on the shelf and not really digging in. You know, that would be my only thing about how I feel like it's shifted. I get that that's actually kind of part of what's keeping the hobby alive. So I'm not going to say that's not cool, but like if I had one thing to say to collectors, I would say like that's part of what keeps me from getting everything is like, what are the movies that I really want? What are, you know, movies I really need to own and extras that I really want to hear about from movies that I love. And that has really allowed me to scale back and just let go of things, you know? And once, I think for me, like I have this whole, it probably is related to OCD actually, like where I'll get on a streak with something, you know, whether it's, you know, not eating after 6 p.m. at night or something like that. Once I get on the streak, mentally, I'm like, I can't break the streak. I got to keep it going. And I think there's something that happens with I got to have everything. But it's like a reverse OCD where I'm like, once I let go and say, you know what, I don't need to have all that. It's freeing. And I'm able to just sort of go, you know what, I don't need this round of that specific labels, titles just to have them. I'm really trying to focus on what do I really want, especially also because money has become a thing. I mean, it's always been a thing, but like, I just want to really be conscious of it right now, you know, not to get too personal, but you know, you just never know with your job, like what's going to happen. And so I'm really trying to save money as much as I can. And it helps me to just let go. I mean, that's the only thing that's tough about watching your stuff is that I'm almost always like, oh, there's another thing I got to get. And so I have to fight that a little bit, but I still love having the information and knowing that, you know, this or that is coming, you know, so I'll always enjoy it. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I get it that it's hard for people. The FOMO thing is very real. And I think that's the tough part about what we do is you're showing off stuff and you're in a way encouraging that. And it's hard not to, you know, just because you're happy and you're celebrating what you got. But everybody needs to know, just get the movies that you seem most interested in. There's going to be a lot of blind buys, and that's what Ryan and I are here to help you with, is to try and suggest things that you might like that maybe you haven't seen. But, you know, take your time, wait for sales. You know, there's not a lot of stuff that disappears. I think that's the other thing I get hung up on is like how long things actually stick around, you know, like
especially because that fluctuates a lot.
Totally. Yeah. So like, that's the thing I think people are worried about. Oh, is this going to sell out? I've seen this kind of thing happen, you know, with Vinegar Syndrome or whatever, but those things actually tend to hang on longer than you think for the most part. You're going to miss a few things if you wait, but I think there's sometimes it's just okay to just be like, let's just keep an eye on those numbers and I can wait until I absolutely have to get this. And I think that's another thing to sort of try and temper your buying with, you know.
That streak breaking point it's so helpful, especially if you can kind of force yourself to do it when it comes to spine numbers or slip covers or everything from a label. If there's something that you're like kind of iffy about and you purposefully skip one, you're going to find it so much easier to skip other ones and you'll feel so much better about it.
It really did feel good. Like when I started doing it, it was like this weird weight was lifted in a way. I was like, oh, I really don't feel that bad that I don't have that, you know? And then sometimes you can find the movie somewhere else and watch it and then get your fix of like, oh, I watched that movie and actually wasn't that good. And I'm glad I didn't buy it. You know, like you can almost have like a reverse sort of satisfaction of like, I really did not need that. And I think that's another way to sort of alleviate it. Go find the movie somewhere and watch it and just go, I'm glad I didn't have to get that. It wasn't necessary. So.
Well, checking on everything else, what are and obviously caveat to everybody that might see this later, we're not, saying anything else not mentioned is bad or anything, but what are some of the favorite labels that are on fire right now for you in 2023?
I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to be too revelatory in terms of new stuff that people haven't heard of before. But I mean, it's a lot of the same stuff that I've loved for the last several years continues to be great,
Right.
and Fun City Editions, again, it and everybody knows it. Jonathan's a very good friend of mine. That's not what it's about. It's really about the quality of the releases, and I'm just really excited for him. And it's been really neat. There's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't ever share about what he's gone through to get the label to where it is and what he continues to struggle with in terms of the costs of running a label. And I think that's another thing that I get a little hung up on with people that criticize packaging or things like that. Like, they don't really think about a per unit cost for a label, and especially a small label. Adding a slipcover, putting multiple discs, multiple cases, like that stuff really adds up. And I think what people have to think about is that the less that a label might spend on something, the more they will continue to be around and putting out great stuff. So like, when you think about complaining about packaging for a label that you like or something like that, just think about the fact that like they may have saved some money, and that may mean you get another 2-3 more Blu-rays, through that. So anyway, I love what Jonathan's doing, and again, more stuff that I've been privy to a little information I can't share, but there's a lot of exciting stuff coming from him and from Fun City, and it's just going to continue to be great. Like, I'm just really jazzed about everything he's doing. And he's really built an incredibly strong brand, and I'm so proud of him. And so again, it feels like I'm just touting my friend, but honestly, as like, it's just good stuff, right?
Yep. Everything that Fun City has put out, for the most part, I think there's been maybe one miss in the entire catalog for me so far. But really, the important thing is, I mean, you've talked to Jonathan on your show. I've talked to him a couple times on mine, and just listening to the person behind it, just like a lot of these interviews I do, it changes everything for me. Because when I see Alphabet City and can look at the influence that it may have had on Jonathan and why he chose this film, it totally puts that in this weird, like, almost friend context. And obviously it's closer for you, but because I've seen the person behind the label, it's this weird, like, chain of the person behind the label behind the film, and watching that journey, it makes it so much more, like, rich in my life. I love that aspect.
Yeah, no, it's super nice. And it's neat that he's excited to promote things, and he's really made himself available to, I mean, just about anybody that wants to talk to him about Blu-rays. But I love that he's come on your show a lot, and I know that he's appreciated your support, and I'm sure you'll have him on again soon. I hope, because he's got more good stuff coming. I'm very excited about Primetime Panic 2, like, can't wait to check that out. So anyway, it's just great stuff, and he's a good guy and has just very good taste, so it's going to continue to be great. I think the other thing too, before I leave him, is that he's really doing his best, as are a lot of labels, it seems like now, to get new scans from the best possible materials, get the best extras, involve the cast and crew of the movies. I think that's another thing that it's tougher to do. It's more time consuming and more difficult to get people from these older movies on board. A lot of times the actors don't want to talk about older movies, or it's hard to get to them, and people just give up and they get some film scholar or whatever. And I love that stuff, don't get me wrong, but I really do think there's nothing that's a full substitute for involving people that were actually in the movies, involved with the productions, and have those specific insights. I love the insights of the academic type folks a lot. That I learn a lot from that. But I do think it's great that he really pushes as hard as he can to get Jeff Bridges on, Cutter's Way or Rancho Deluxe. I know that's not an easy thing to do. So I love that about him, and on top of everything else. But anyway, moving on. I mean, the other stuff, again, will be pretty obvious. Like, I've sort of made a tie at number 2 here for Indicator and Arrow. They're just continuing to do really good stuff. And I got to give some props to Indicator, because they're really pushing, whereas Arrow is now becoming a little bit more commercial in some ways. I mean, they're still doing a lot of off the beaten path stuff, but in terms of the 4Ks, they're really hitting big genre titles. I mean, they're off the beaten path, big genre titles, but they're big genre titles, and I'm excited when they do them. Yeah. Whereas Indicator is really taking some risks with these box sets. You know, like they are really putting themselves out there in a way that I have to give hats off to, because to put together the Michael J. Murphy set, or the Mexican horror set of recent, there's just so much. The Hollywood to Heaven set. I mean, who else is gonna do? I mean, I guess that's a kind of thing maybe Criterion would do, but I don't think so. I really don't. I think Criterion's moved away from that kind of risk taking in terms of a large box set.
So 5 years ago, maybe. Yeah,
it feels like a long time ago now, right? I mean, the Criterion Channel is doing things like that, maybe.
Yep.
Indicator just really continues to take chances and put out interesting product that is really not going to appeal to everybody. And on that level, I hope, it remains profitable for them and they can continue to do what they do. But they also put out, really cool editions of 60s and 70s films. And I'm always excited. And 30s and 40s, like they still, I'm still so psyched that they put out the Howard Hawks films, the Criminal Code and 20th Century. Like they were the first ones to that. And I was like, you guys will forever have my heart in some ways, because it's taken too long for these and those are two great movies. Right. I highly recommend. But they continue to put that stuff out. The 30s, they did some Lubitsch recently, and so they really got an eye on all kinds of cinema, and I love that about them. And again, Arrow just continuing to be a heavyweight, just doing great work, great scans, and good extras, and just some of the best 4Ks out there. Honestly, I always get excited about their stuff, and even things that I don't think I want, I end up like The Lighthouse, for instance, is a movie I like, but I was like, how many times am I gonna really watch The Lighthouse? Right. And then the other day I was like, you know what, I gotta get that 4K. I have to have it. That was a weird one where I should have probably not gotten it, but I got it. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. It's another one that I don't know enough about Eggers, and I'd like to learn a bit more about it. And that's part of the reason I got it too. But I love to support them. They're just truly one of those labels I love to give money to, and they're doing good stuff. But I guess the new kid on the block that I'm most excited about right now is Radiance.
Saw that coming.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, especially when I got that new package in the mail with OC and Stiggs and Thieves Like Us. Like that, that's a real interesting swing, especially OC and Stiggs. Like I remember watching it. I mean, I love Altman in general, and I'm excited that maybe Fran will do some other Altman, like Quintet or Perfect Couple, A Wedding, Health. I know California Split is problematic, so I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I'd love to see him do some more Altman. I know he's really, and that probably won't happen for a while now that he's just done 2 Altman titles. But that and the Messiah of Evil coming, I really got I was excited by the, Big Time Gambling Boss is actually one of my favorite discoveries of the year. Like I really, really dug that movie. And I love that he's going full world cinema, foreign stuff, all kinds of cool stuff. But yeah, bringing in the Altman, you're gonna hook me always. So yeah, OC and Stiggs. Like I started watching it the other day, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why this was a tricky movie to do. There's a lot of tricky things about it, but there's a great almost 2-hour documentary on there that's great. I'm sure you've checked it out. It's giving the history of those characters that were part of the National Lampoon thing, which I didn't really know about. That's one of those movies that came out on DVD. It didn't have any Altman extras at the time, so I really didn't have a context for it. And just watching it, I was getting excited about it, and I was like, I want to talk about this on Pure Cinema. I got to find an episode that I can swing this into for Elric, because Elric and I talk about it all the time. Well, sometimes you'll get one movie that you're like, I want to talk about this movie. What's an episode I can build around it? And so I got to figure that out yet. I don't know what that is. But I definitely want to watch it again, and it looks great. And yeah, they're just really doing interesting stuff. And it seems like some of my favorite stuff they're doing is their overseas stuff. They're doing a lot of good stuff that's both region A and B, but yeah, the overseas is this, the Welcome to the Dollhouse finally getting a nice special edition, and Miami Blues getting I think, a better special edition than it got. Did it have much on the Shout Factory, or did he bring over? I can't remember now.
He brought over a couple archival extras, but it wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah, so he did a great job with that one, and so those are the kind of movies that he's doing that I'm really excited about. And Messiah of Evil is just like, that's like a heavyweight choice. Like I'm so happy for that. I mean, it was cool to have the Code Red Blu-ray, but it wasn't much of anything, and now he's bringing this big double disc set. I mean, or multiple disc set. I can't wait. I truly can't wait for that. And I'd love to see him dip his toe into genre a little bit more, but it seems like he's just going to do what he wants to do, and that's cool, and I respect that. That's great.
Well, and people are finally just getting their hands on their first box set, and he's got, I think, 4 lined up for this year, which wild for your first year as a label. And people forget that their first release came out on January 2nd of this year, and they're already with this massive reputation. And
that's crazy. I was thinking I forgot that it just started this year, because I was like, oh, they've been around since last year. But I feel like what was happening is we were talking about them in this community last year, but they didn't actually get stuff in your hands until this year. So they're, if you think about what he's accomplished in like about 6 months, I mean, more than 6 months if you count the buildup, but of 6 months of putting discs in people's hands, I think he's really done something interesting. Go through the box sets with me again. The
first is that Franco Nero box set, Damiano Damiani. They've got the Italian comedies box set coming out.
Gotcha.
The World Noir, he announced that one a couple months ago.
I might have missed that one. I got to check that out.
That is, I don't think that's coming till like November, so you got some time. And then the VSL that Vinegar Syndrome just did of those Piotr Solkin titles, he's doing 3 of those as well. And then another UK label is putting out the 4th one that Vinegar Syndrome also did.
Wow.
But it's also a big deal because Vinegar Syndrome was 2 discs for 4 films. He's doing a film per disc and loading it with extras. So they're going to be quite a bit better than the Vinegar Syndrome releases, most likely. That's
great. I mean, again, this is another thing to think about, people. He made a choice there, and that's going to cost him more money, and he's younger than Vinegar Syndrome by a lot, and that's a pretty heavy risk to take, and I salute it. That's pretty solid stuff. Very cool.
Also a risk to put it out, 5 months after Vinegar Syndrome is selling it to the world. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, no, that's ballsy, and I love it. Yeah, but he's really gotten my attention in a big way, and I mean, I have a few honorable mentions. If you follow my channel, these are not. It's not like I haven't talked. Like, I'm sure what these are going to be. Like Canadian International Pictures. I mean, just really solid stuff. I got to meet. I know you've already had David on the show, but I got to meet David Marriott. Actually, when Hertzberg was in town, he had a birthday at this little bar, and David was there, and just a really neat guy who, and not surprisingly, and I've told you this off mic, just knows his stuff in a way that you just feel like, oh yeah, this is a guy who knows movies in a big way and is very excited about them. And I can't wait for Devil at Your Heels. I'll keep talking about it until they bring it out. He was, talking about that restoration and how it's coming, and I can't wait for people to see it. If you haven't, it's truly one of my favorite things Elric's ever turned me on to, and one of the greatest documentaries ever. Just about a guy who wants to drive a rocket car across, try to jump it across a river, and everything that I can't even possibly define how good of a documentary is based on that premise, because there's so much that goes into it that it's so tense, and so he's such a character. You're just like, wow, this is a movie that it's American movie level good. It's just like amazing stuff. So I can't wait for them to do that. I've been waiting since they launched, but I'm excited with everything they put out because it's all quality stuff, quality scans, quality extras. They're really doing great work, and it's not a lot. It's like very, very small operation.
And the biggest thing for me is they don't focus on one genre. So my favorite labels lately are the ones that I don't feel like I'm growing tired of the same thing over and over again, because every new title is this refreshing, massive change of pace from the previous month.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's interesting. And it does help with, I mean, I want to support young labels especially, but this is the kind of thing where you go, okay, that's a really cool change of pace. I don't need that one, but I love that they did it. And somebody else is going to grab that and get involved and be really excited about it. And I'll look for the next one. But that's where I find those holes to be like, okay, I don't have to have that. It's exciting that they're varying up what they're doing. But yeah, it's very cool, the wide range of stuff they've put out and exposed the world to. hard to not talk about Dan Kinham and VHS Hit Fest.
Right.
He's just a really fun guy, and I've had him on the show, and I don't know. His stuff is fascinating, and it's varied in its own way. I mean, it's all sort of low budget, weird movies, but it's stuff that this is a guy who's truly dug through just stacks and stacks of VHS tapes, dusty VHS tapes for years, and come up with this stuff. And so it's really exciting whatever he announces, and everybody should get Adjust Your Tracking, because I really do think another great documentary about collecting. And they talked to a lot of great people, including my friend Phil Blankenship, who's got some really great stories about collecting VHS in that doc. But yeah, I pre-ordered that. I just got it in the mail yesterday, and very excited to check it out. So yeah, Dan's doing some really cool stuff, and I'm really excited for him. And then Decanalog is another one. I mean, this is another one where I'm friends with one of the people. I'm friends with Elijah Drenner, but they're doing some really cool and, again, varied stuff. The new Adam Rifkin Film Festival set just came out of nowhere. I was like, I had no idea they had this in them, and it's a really delightful set. And I talked to, for people that haven't seen it, I talked to Adam on my channel, and he is a really sweet guy and just a filmmaker that I enjoy his work. I'd love to see Dark Backward get a really nice Blu-ray at some point. That movie's absolutely fascinating. But yeah, just Decanalog is doing lots of interesting stuff, a lot more of it on the new side. But they've definitely put me the Quentin Dupieux movie they did. What is it? Eyes. I'm blanking on it now.
Yes.
I'll figure it out. But anyway, that one.
Keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out. Thank you. That was I thought that was absolutely hilarious, and really enjoyed that one. And just, again, a lot of variety, a lot of films that are completely off my radar. Had no idea that they even existed. Elijah's he's been in the biz a long time, and he's a big, big hardcore movie fan. And so I know he's only part of that team, but for what they're doing, I just trust that they have an eye on interesting stuff, so definitely keep an eye out for them. No pun intended. Nice. No pun intended.
So with all of these being mentioned, and we kind of started this off with how busy both of us are, how much time are you getting to watch stuff nowadays? Because I mean, I know for me, that's one of my biggest struggles. I rarely, and I know your kid is a little older than mine, so you can watch a little more freedom in indulging films than I can sometimes. But it's so hard to stay on top of things without falling asleep at 11:30 at night to a third of a film watched 6 nights in a row.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have those problems all the time. I have a few movies that I've started that I have to finish, which is not ideal, not something I really like to do, but watching movies in segments becomes part of your viewing purview, really, when you have to manage your time. But yeah, I mean, the kid 14 now and taking an interest in horror movies, so is asking to watch scary things. We watched The Descent the other night.
Nice.
And yeah, the horror thing is really coming on strong, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, when I can, I try to do that. Although movies with my kid had gone away for a long time. It was just music was the thing, which is great. I love that. Really, they're really into music and everything. But movies are coming back a little bit now, and I'm excited about it. But my wife is a big movie fan, so I can always try and watch, especially new stuff with her.
Yeah.
The older stuff, I'll throw on something in the morning before work, or start something after dinner if it's acceptable to the plans of the household. I might start something after dinner, and sometimes I'll finish it. I'm trying to get to one a day at least, but it's hard. It's hard to keep on that track, but it's a catch as catch can scenario, where I squeeze in a little time. And I got to say that part of what I do for the podcast is sort of sussing out movies and being like, okay, is this something I want to talk about? And so sometimes, half an hour, maybe all I have, and half an hour, maybe all I need to say, you know what? Unfortunately, I don't think this movie is something. It's cool, but I don't think it's something I'm going to need to finish and talk about. And that makes me sad too, because I don't like to watch a movie and not finish it. But, as we are trying to gather stuff to talk about on shows, I don't want to waste time with something that I can't talk about. So that's where those halves of movies or quarter movies, I'm still getting time in. I'm checking something off, but occasionally I'll have some misses. You're going to have misses, and that's okay. You don't have to. That's the other thing. I don't want to discourage people from finishing movies, but you don't have to finish a movie if you don't like it.
Right.
I feel like there's that dedication to finishing, so that you can say I finished it, and now I can, if I want to be critical, I can be critical. I think you can be critical of a movie if you've watched half an hour of it and didn't care for it. I think you can find, because I don't know about you, but if I watch half an hour of a movie and it hasn't grabbed me, I've rarely had a movie recover in the last hour, especially a really good movie. Like if I'm absolutely not vibing with it at all in the first 30 minutes, I know for me, it's just not happening. It's just not going to dig itself. It's got to start stronger in a way, or start in a way that at least I'm engaged or excited by, or I'm going to have to step away. I just don't have the time, unfortunately, to finish everything, which is too bad, like I said.
Well, and that's the thing. Usually, even by that half-hour mark, you can tell, is it possible that something could be good enough to make this feel redeeming? Because right now, this could just be utter tripe, and I don't even want to watch another minute.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, a lot of labels, I'm not going to name any names, I think people will probably know, but they're putting out a lot of trash movies, a lot of movies that are not great. And I certainly am open to those movies, and I certainly enjoy those movies, but there are just sometimes where I'm like, yeah, this is not my trash. This is not the kind of movie that is, low quality that I'm going to enjoy. And that's the other thing, like, don't be afraid to let go of those movies. Like, I think that's another hard thing for collectors is like, I bought it. I don't want to get rid of it because now I own it and I'm not going to get my full money back. But the way I look at it is like, if you're not enjoying it, if you're not going to watch it again and you have something else coming up that you want, there's no reason that you should keep it around. You should invest whatever money you can get for it into a new title. And that's how you keep going, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how I justify it with my wife, certainly, is to say, I got rid of these and now I'm going to get, I sold a bunch of stuff so I could pre-order the Shout Factory, disaster film box set that's coming.
Looks so good.
Yeah, I mean, I had all those movies on DVD, but I was like, I got to get this set, but I was like, it's 120 something bucks. Okay, I got to sell some stuff, which is what I did. And it feels good to purge a little bit, because I'm sure you're having the same problem I have. It's getting out of hand around here. You can't see it, but there's just piles over here. There's piles over here.
Same.
Piles on shelves, on top of shelves over here.
Same.
There's just lots of piles and boxes in the garage. So it's getting kind of to a place where I feel bad. I like to keep them around again for pure cinema's sake, because I'm like, you never know when I'm going to want to go. I dig into the boxes in the garage pretty regularly, but they're not really on display in a way that I would like them to be. And that makes me a little sad. So I have to really think, like, what do I really need? I'm getting way off topic here with this.
No, this is perfect. And honestly, it's one of the most relatable things for people watching this. And you and I have been talking about this kind of stuff for years. Literally, this is the exact sort of thing that people have turned to you for a long time. And when it comes to the watch time versus the should I keep this film, that's tons of people are facing that right now. And it's so bad. Even like selling stuff on the secondhand market has dipped like crazy this year. There's so few people buying right now. Is that right? Tough.
Yeah, I've noticed that a little bit. And when I do sell things, it's usually stuff that's the cheapest stuff I have for sale. Yeah, no, I guess I have noticed that. I wonder what that's about. Can you make any account for that? Any ideas?
I mean, other than economic crisis facing all of us, and
I guess that would be it.
Stuff costing way more than we've been acclimated to. I mean, food alone for my family is skyrocketed by 40% at least.
True. No, that's true. These are things I think about, but I don't always put together with why it affects collect. Of course it does. Of course that makes sense. Yeah. So a lot of people buying less. I loved when like Celeste Le Cabre was going through Vinegar Syndrome packages and like what she liked and what she sold and how much she sold things for. That really got me kind of, I don't want to say excited about selling, but just kind of like going, yeah, I'm a subscriber, but I don't have to keep everything. And that's okay. And that's been hard to let go of some of the subscription titles because they're part of that. But I'm trying to do more of that. I'm really trying to break things apart where I can and just say, look, I appreciate this was a cool part of the subscription that I got. This is just not a movie for me, and I'm not going to watch it. And X or Y is coming, and I really want to get that. Especially right now, like I said, I'm trying to be as frugal as possible. So it really is about going through every other weekend, every 2-3 weekends, I'll go through the stacks, the piles and the boxes, and just start picking things out and either watching them or already deciding, you know what, this has just got to go. And I think that's a good habit to get into. You don't have to do it. Maybe you do it once a month, but it is kind of a recharge to feel like once you've sold that stuff. Like I also have notes in my phone that's like Blu-ray funds, I think I call it. I can't remember what it is, but basically I keep track of everything that I spend and everything I bring in from sales. So I'm always like plus minus.
Yeah.
You know, and I know what my balance is in terms of the money that I've earned from selling discs. So I never touch any other money than the disc money. But it's definitely helped me kind of, I get really, I don't know about you, but I get really anxious about money, you know, just in general. It's just the thing that you're always kind of worried about it. And so when I know I have a couple $250 in my fund and I don't want anything, I feel good because I'm like, okay, well, I have that. I don't need. That's the other thing is not feeling like once you have that money that you have to spend it. Just keep it. That number just sits there, and then when stuff's getting announced every week, you can literally be like, okay, is this where I'm gonna? Nope, I'm not gonna spend it this time. This is not gonna do it for me. So that's been helpful too for me. It's just in my notes, keeping track of what I'm spending. It also helps to just see it and go, oh man, I've spent a lot of money. And it really does. I do another thing. This is a really dumb thing that I do, but it's something that I found kind of useful. I call it $0 days, which is I just basically a line in my notes that's just the date and did I spend any money that day on anything. And I love to just look at a whole week and I'll just put a check mark after the day if I didn't do it. And I look at a whole week and be like, I didn't spend any money this week on fast food, on lunches, on coffee, on anything. I don't buy coffee anymore, actually, because I can't drink caffeine because I won't be able to sleep. But like those little things that you spend money on that just add up. And when I do spend money in that, it's a separate thing, but I'll just be like, okay, so I bought, fast food today, or I bought dinner today or whatever. And it's just good to see it and just go, okay, I'm just keeping track of what I'm doing. And the same thing again applies to the physical media. But then I feel better when I do want to get something because I'm like, look, I didn't spend I was good this week. Didn't spend anything this week. And now I'm going to, pre-order this, 4K or whatever it is.
Well, and I haven't really pointed this out before, and I'm just kind of thinking about it on the side, so hopefully this makes sense. It feels like a lot of the labels are focusing on bigger titles. So when something gets announced, something is obviously costs have gone up, but it seems like packaging and even not necessarily putting down the packaging, but something that would have been 2 discs 4 years ago is now getting much more love and attention. So now it's 4 discs and it costs $15 more than it would have a handful of years ago. So because of that, everything that gets announced is more than you expect. So Shout Factory is announcing, the Shaw Brothers collections, and they're $140, and you're not ready for that, but you're like, I love Shaw Brothers. That's a lot of money to suddenly get announced.
Exactly. And that's the kind of way that you can feel better about. You don't have to pre-order that the first day. That's the other thing I've noticed is that I love to support Diabolic, and I love that once I do that pre-order, there's something about they take the money right now, but in my mind I'm like, okay, I have the money right now. In September I have no idea, but exactly. once I hit that pre-order button, Jesse's got me. I'm covered. It's going to show up, it's going to be perfectly packaged, and I'm good. But I also know that you can pre-order those titles pretty close to release. He'll still have them, or Orbit will have them, or whoever, and so you can wait and you can just start to chip away at it, sell a few things here and there. And then this stuff seems way more reachable as opposed to running up a credit card bill to just get it now. I mean, I've heard with other collectors, like even toy collectors, there's all kinds of buy now, pay later services that really I find very frightening because that really preys on the collector mentality in a way that's pretty cruel, if I'm being honest. And I get that a lot of people need to get the things they need to get, especially right now. A lot of people don't feel great. The world is not great, and I'm not happy about it. And it's a big bummer a lot of the time if I'm being truthful. But and I know that buying things is that dopamine. It gives you that, it makes you feel better. But yeah, people digging themselves into holes over these expensive box sets. I think there's other ways around it, and you'll feel better when you try and do it another way. But you just know that you can wait. That's the other thing I'm trying to do. Like, I'll see those Arrow announcements. It used to be that on the day I'm like going right over to Diabolic and ordering them, but now I'm just like, again, using my notes, just like, oh, that's something. And then here's the date. Sometimes I'll even put like something in my calendar that's like a month out from the release and be like, okay, today's maybe the day you could look at your finances and go, maybe I'll pre-order that now. But it alleviates the FOMO, and it alleviates the feeling of like, I might forget about this. I think that's the other thing. There's so much coming at us all the time. Even just with your phone, like alarms and calendar announcements, but that said, like, at least you put something in there that's like going to allow you to relax and let go. And just in a month, you can re-examine it. It's not even available yet. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not missing it yet. And so much of it is psychological, this collecting business. And so I'm really trying to work on those things that cause me anxiety and tone them down where I can and just relax, a little bit, enjoy it a little bit more, I guess.
Well, and that's one of the things that Brad Henderson is pointing out right now, every time that he's talking about TerraVision or appearing on somebody's podcast or something, is that it seems like a lot of these collectors are really hyped and super zoned in on the announcements, but then nobody's following through and buying stuff. And it's that dopamine hit of, oh my gosh, these are coming. That's great. Cool. I'm never buying it. And then silent for months, which obviously we were just saying you don't need to necessarily, but these labels got to survive. So somebody's got to make some sales in there. So
no, it's true. I'm not trying to discourage people from buying on the first day. Always, like, if you're excited, you want it, you're ready to buy it, do it on the first day. They need that. I don't want to, hang up the labels this way, but like, I also know that there's a lot of people that complain about things and they're never going to buy it. They weren't going to buy it anyway, even if the packaging was perfect. They just want to complain. So there's just a lot of big talk on the internet about wanting things and about complaining about things. At the end of the day, it's like, were you really going to put the rubber to the road and buy this? A lot of people know.
Well, and it's kind of the perfect week to discuss that too, because we've had two really egregious examples. One of the big ones is The Exorcist 4K coming out this year, and so many people are up in arms because the US is getting what everybody is deeming as bad slipcover art. And then that's not that big of a deal. But then on the other hand, which I don't know about you, I actually think should be kind of looked at as a big deal, the Bruce Lee set from Arrow getting delivered to everybody. Some people, like, they're opening it and it's like falling apart because the box wasn't handled properly. They weren't packaged right. So there's a difference. There's a spectrum of severity. There's things that, I've had stuff come from Diabolic with a corner bump, and I've never said a damn thing to him. There's no reason to.
Yeah, I mean, his record is pretty high.
Right.
In terms of I honestly don't know if I've ever had anything damaged that's come to me. He's almost 100% for me, but I get it, and I appreciate that you're not the guy who's like gonna complain about a corner ding. Like, the other thing is, like, once it's on the shelf and you can't even probably see that corner ding, I think the OCD subsides a little bit for me. There's that initial like, oh man, it's not perfect. Yep. But then I'm usually able to like go, oh, once I put it on the shelf, I'm never gonna think about it, and it's really not that big a deal. But yeah, that is a bummer. I didn't hear that about the Bruce Lee set falling apart. That's not right. That's just not right. It can't fall apart. Like, that's a functionality thing. Like, you're talking about disc damage, and that's just not okay. It's one thing to get a corner ding, but like, wow, that's a bummer. I definitely will have to keep an eye on that if I ever consider getting that one.
Well, and they've pretty much, it's not even available to buy on their site at the moment. And everybody's speculating it wasn't out of stock. They're just trying to figure out a better way to ship it because they're super heavy. And when you're shipping it from the UK worldwide with one tiny little air bubble in the box, it's not going to survive. I mean, and most people, they are getting it and it's got like a couple corner bumps, and that's the worst of it. But there are some where the box itself is coming apart at the seams. So
it's a bad look from Arrow. That's a bummer. It's a real bummer.
Yeah, it's rough. Other than that, what else is exciting about the hobby at the moment for you? And one of the big things is we've seen like the move to the martial arts over the last couple of years. Do you think there's a big fad sort of genre that's going to hit us hard in the next couple of years, maybe?
I think it really does seem to be building up. My interest in that is been always medium. Like, I like it, but it hasn't obsessed me for some time now. But
Right.
I mean, I have the volume 1 and 2 Shawscope sets, and I'm thinking about the Shout Factories, but then I also know that I haven't really dug through my Shawscopes yet. So I'm like, maybe I should just go through these and really assess, what I need and what films are in those sets. And, it was a kind of a novelty when those came out. And now it's like, there's so much martial arts that it's actually become difficult to know what to get. No, there's a lot of great stuff, but it doesn't all appeal to me, if I'm being honest, personally. So it's tough. It's a tough thing to know. But yeah, it does seem like that's coming on strong. And for fans of the genre, that's really exciting. These are really enjoyable and exciting films to watch. So that's cool. I don't know. I mean, I'm just jazzed. Like, for me to get 2 of my favorite movies of all time on 4K in the same year, and After Hours and Rio Bravo, and 2 great editions, like, I'm kind of like, 2023 really doesn't have to give me much more than these 2 on 4K, because this After Hours is just, oh my God.
Yeah.
I love it. I was just so excited to get it in my hands after all this time, And Rio Bravo also. So, like, getting a couple of your favorite movies on 4K, like, I'm really trying to relish that stuff, like, here's one of my absolute favorites, and this is hopefully the last time I will ever buy it. Maybe not, but I mean, I would buy it again if another thing, but I wouldn't be upset if this is the last time I buy After Hours,
And the crazy thing, that sort of thing is happening like every couple months right now. I mean, we're getting, just this year, we're talking From Beyond in 4K, The Exorcist in 4K, After Hours, Warner Archive delivering some Best Picture winners on Blu-ray that have never been out on Blu-ray. We're getting definitive editions from labels all across the world of titles that, I mean, 3 years ago were on every single wish list, and now we're just, they're here. No big deal. This is just part of everyday life.
Let's just hope we don't all start taking that too much for granted, because then I think people they don't buy maybe as much. And I'm not saying you have to keep buying. I mean, again, the bottom line is support the industry. All the stuff I've been saying is not meant to deter you from buying physical media and not supporting the industry so it keeps going, but more just allowing you to space things out a little bit, and do what economically fits for you a little better, and so you can really enjoy it and not feel bad that you spent more money than you probably should have. Despite supporting the hobby, you're hurting yourself, and I want everybody to be less anxious about this stuff. So that's the bottom line with that. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy the amount of, like, holy grail titles that we're getting in the last year or two. I mean, that speaks to the fact that there's only so many movies, and now it's finally getting to some of the stuff that we've been waiting a long time for. So I hope it continues. My wish is that it continues, and it seems like it's going pretty strong. I don't know, you're more in the thick of it than I am. What's your take in terms of how strong it is and how it's going?
I mean, kind of going off of something I just said a minute ago, I hope that we don't sort of lose the bigger picture, and instead of just going for these massive grail titles, like, Severin did Four Flies on Grey Velvet, super excited that we have it, but I also hope that they continue to do the smaller titles. Even though Four Flies might continue to make them more money, we got to be able to capture as much as we possibly can. There's just so much out there still that we've never seen on disc, never seen past DVD, some never even made it to home video, and that's why I try to champion, like, Imprint so much, because every single month there's 2 or 3 titles that this has never been on disc in the world. How are you still doing this? This is amazing.
Yeah, no, I feel bad now. I should have mentioned both Severin and Imprint. Like, I can only mention so much, but Severin, the box sets for Severin's are some of the best box sets that are out there.
It's stupid how good they are.
Yeah, they're really, and I want them to do more of those. I know those are really ambitious and expensive projects, and that it's not easy to do those, but I'd love a Severin box set. Like, really, David just knocks it out of the park with that stuff. It's amazing. They're really doing good work. And yeah, Imprint, really interesting. Like, just the last, I want to say the May or the June, I think the May titles had Bus Riley's Back in Town, which is a pretty, it's not great, but it's a pretty good movie that I enjoy and I'd seen on VHS. And then one I'd never seen was Jules Dassin's Uptight, which is, really, really good. That's a big discovery for me that Imprint gave me. I definitely recommend people check that movie out. Really, really solid. Yeah, really good stuff coming. They're doing good box sets too. Really, the Walter Hill stuff's coming. They've got a lot in the pipeline that's looking very promising. And I know people rightfully complain about the expense of keeping up with their stuff. I'm hoping that it seems like they've got enough of a limited number that between their Australian buyers and the importers, they seem to be selling stuff out. So it seems like they're doing okay. But yeah, I'd love to see them continue to put out those not on Blu-ray. It's true. They're really, whereas a lot of labels are focusing on 4Ks of films that are well worn and certainly enjoyed, but easy bets. You've got a lot of first time on Blu-ray stuff coming, and it's not all great. Some of it you're like, yeah, I can see why this took a little longer to get here. Yeah. Like, again, it's not running the movie. They're not bad movies, but they're not wow movies. But like Uptight to me was like a wow movie. And I'm like, that's really cool because nobody else has touched this movie. And yeah, I really do get excited for them a lot too. Imprint is really doing good work for sure.
Yeah. To shift away from home video and to get back to podcasting for a minute, what's exciting about Pure Cinema lately? What's keeping you going?
What's keeping me going? Well, we've had a really good year in terms of banking episodes. So we are always trying to come. I guess one thing that was exciting was Elric came up with the video store sampler idea, which we've really gone full bore into. I think we put out 2 of them, but we've done 4. And we probably will do another one. So those are super fun because it's just like discuss. You know what? I think if I'm talking about the things that Pure Cinema does for me, and Elric pushes me too in a way that I appreciate. Although it is hard work sometimes to be discovering new stuff all the time. Like not just for our Discoveries episode at the end of the year, which I have. I've talked about it before. Like people use Letterboxd because it really is the way to go to keep track of discoveries, to keep track of things you want to watch. Every single episode of Pure Cinema I've ever done has 1 or 2 private lists. One that's usually like a watch list, and one that is my actual list for the show with my notes on each movie. You can put notes in there, and it's an incredible resource for me to kind of keep track of that stuff, and it gets me excited about it. So. Like doing the missing pieces episodes we've been doing this year with like actors missing pieces or the directors missing pieces we did last year. And then we just did 80s missing pieces. We've got another decade missing pieces. I'm not going to say which one that we just started last night in terms of Elric was like, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, great.
Nice.
So I'm already digging into that. And that stuff it's tough because you're really having to go and find stuff you've never seen before. And like you and I both, we watch a lot of movies, and I'm not saying there's no good movies left because that's a ridiculous thing to say at any point in your life. But it's a little harder sometimes. You really have to think harder about, what you haven't seen and what you're interested in seeing, and start going down rabbit holes of like, decades and directors and actors, even like using an actor. Another thing I love about Letterboxd is that you can there's a list for just about anything you can think of. Yep. And for people that don't know, you can take any list you're looking at and break it down by decade if you want to. So like when we're doing Missing Pieces 80s, somebody has done like the Danny Perry Guide for the Film Fanatic, the entire book, like 4,000 movies. Wow. And I was like, okay, I just want to see the 80s. And you can just zoop, there they are. And that's an incredible resource. So I think that's something people can do if they want to continue to like find fun stuff to watch. This is my process. As I go into Letterboxd, I look up, if we're talking about thrillers, whatever, I'll look up underrated thrillers, underrated 80s, whatever, and then I'll just start sifting through that stuff, and one thing leads to another. So I think that's what I love about the show is it's always kind of an archaeological dig. It's always a research project lately, and like I said, that's harder work. a lot more time goes into every episode that we do than just grab. I mean, but at this point we're almost 7 years in or something, 6 years in. And, we've gone through a lot of the favorites. So now we're just trying to make new favorites. And it's like I said before, when you asked about the show and what's exciting, I think it's exciting to me that people like a show where mostly the movies that are talked about are not going to be known by a lot of people, at least not all of them. And if they are, that's great. Those are hardcore movie people, because these are things we're really trying to dig out. But when I remember seeing a Twitter thread at one point where people were just saying, would you rather listen to a podcast episode about a movie you've never seen or a movie you've seen? And almost 100% it was like, movie I've seen. I'm like, okay, no, I get that. And I also get that, you don't want spoilers, which is part of the reason we've tried to isolate it down to like, what's the hook? Without necessarily spoiling a movie, we can talk about it and get you excited about it without going deep, so that you have to have seen it to really enjoy the episode. So yeah, that was like at that time when I saw it, I was like, oh man, wow, that our show is not that. So I don't know how much longevity we have, but it seems like the show continues to grow and people continue to get excited about movies they haven't seen. So I really got to give a huge amount of love to the people that do listen to the show and do appreciate, hearing about movies they maybe don't know about. Because I know that's what I go to podcasts for. I want to tell me something I haven't heard about, tell me something that I, like you brought up Unsung Horrors on, what's the podcast you're on with Billy Ray? I'm sorry.
The Incinerator.
Yes. That was a great episode, boy. I enjoyed that episode,
Thanks.
The podcast episode. But you brought up Unsung Horrors. And I mean, those guys, that's all they do. It's like 1,000 views or less on Letterboxd. So literally every time I look at their episodes, I'm like, well, there's another one I haven't heard of.
Yep.
So there's a lot of podcasts out there that are doing it's. I'm not saying we're the only ones doing it. We certainly aren't. There are certainly a lot of podcasts that focus on known films and horror, specifically. And that's great. But I just think, branch out a little bit and allow a podcast or, something to give you some ideas. Again, Letterboxd is a great place. There's a lot of really cool people on Letterboxd that you can just follow and get ideas from what they're watching. Like there's just so many ways to find new movies. And I think that's what I'm always trying to do with the show and in life. That's what keeps me excited is like, here's a David Mamet film that I haven't seen, or maybe I saw it on VHS. I don't remember. And now I'm excited about that, so it's just like each new day brings hopefully an opportunity to discover something. That's what I'm trying to do,
Yeah, that's that, and the positivity. That's exactly why Pure Cinema, Unsung Horrors, Projection Booth, all these ones that constantly are talking about films that I've never seen, most of the time never heard of. That's why they're at the top of the queue, because it's somebody that I can feel this infectious desire to experience what they just experienced with this brand new movie. It sounds amazing. Yeah,
it's fun. It's a lot of fun to discover them, and that's what we're hoping to give the people that feeling when they watch something that sounds interesting to them, that we've dug out. Like, I probably won't talk about it till the end of the year, but I found a really great TV movie. This is just going to sound stupid and vague, I guess, but it's a really enjoyable TV movie that I watched in the last couple months that I'd never heard of, and that totally knocked me over. And I was just like, wow, there's another TV movies, another avenue that's really got a lot of unexplored movies for people, including myself. And so, yeah, when you find one of those gems, boy, I ride that high for a couple days when I'm like, oh man, here's something that like nobody is talking about, and I didn't realize existed until, a month ago. And now it's one of my favorite things. So yeah, I mean, that's exciting. And I just think hopefully it feeds the community and feeds into physical, like the labels those guys are trying to discover movies, and they're trying to put out things, like Radiance is trying to put out movies that you have never been on Blu-ray, Imprint's doing it, and trying to get people to discover things. And that's, like I said, that's bold, especially when you're banking your business on it. Like, I'm just putting out a free podcast that if people don't go for it, no big deal. But, you're banking your business on the fact that you're going to have people discover movies. And I really hope that goes well, because I really do think the conversation and the community just gets better the more stuff we watch. The more we can talk about the same things, and that's great, but I think the more we keep reaching, sort of the more enjoyable the whole thing is, really, because there's so much out there, and every movie that's ever been made, somebody put so much time into it, as you've said before, And so it's just great to dig things out and make people aware of them. And like I said, just keep discovering. It's just my favorite thing, really.
Well, I know we both have a lot to do, so I will give you your time back, but I wanted to ask one final question. Is the Danny Perry documentary still going to happen?
I hope so. I really hope so. I have the footage. I actually started to string out some of it myself. And I've taught myself a little editing over the years from the podcast, but I don't have the chops to make a documentary that I think I'd be super proud of, that right. Like the kind of stuff I've seen done, that and also he's such a hero. It's like, it's so crippling because like, I want to get it out there, but the last thing I'd ever want it to be sort of shoddily put together. Exactly. And so we've had some trouble with getting editors and finding somebody that, really is passionate about the project. And that's sort of required, unfortunately, because my finances with it are a little limited. And so it's a lot to ask of somebody to come in and really shape this blob of material that I have. But like, I do hope to get it done, and I do hope to get it out to the world. Elric has said that he will help. He's got his own film to work on right now, but we hope maybe when he's finished with that, we can focus on this one and see. So my hope is, yes, that it will get out there. And while he's still with us, would be the best.
It would be. And that is a perfect way to end this. So thank you. Thank you for continuing to be inspiring to a lot of people that are discovering movies alongside with you, and just laying the groundwork for all of us that want to be somebody that can own up to your standards.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor. And again, keep doing what you're doing, because that is some really inspiring stuff for me.
I appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too, sir.
Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share with someone else that may appreciate this.